It's something that goes back generations and generations ago. The key to that is survival. If you know what's coming up in the future and you can prepare for it, that guarantees survival to the next day and passing the genes to the next generation. If you don't have that ability and stuff, if you're living in the ancestors and part of the ancestors get the idea that there's going to be a saber-toothed tiger that's going to be munching on one of you, and 6 guys in a group get the message. The 7th guy never got the message, never got the memo. He's going to be cat food.
Hello and welcome to the Rational Mystic Podcast. I'm your host, Jim Webb, and today I have the honor of sharing my interview with David Wallace. David is a man that's almost impossible to summarize in just a short set of words. His history, his background, and experience is just so wide, so I'm going to do my best. But as a psychic practitioner, David is a professional remote viewer, he's a certified Reiki master, and he's also a psychic innovator. He's someone who took it upon himself to develop his own energy healing systems. In addition to all that, David is an author. He has written several books, including The Journey of Our Souls, where he talks about his own experiences, learning about his psychic abilities as a child, and developing those psychic abilities through the context of four near-death experiences. In addition to that, he's also written a set of fictional narratives around a character called Anna Blaze, Rift Jumper. And this is a series of books that he's written and writing with his wife, Ellen, that talks about the journeys of a young girl as she encounters her own psychic abilities. Professionally, David has been a firefighter, he's been a police officer, he has been a public educator for over 25 years, and as a Native Hawaiian, his experiences and his psychic abilities are deeply rooted in the cultural and traditions of his ancestors and his people. Beyond all that, David is just an amazingly warm and wonderful individual to speak with. He is a masterful storyteller and someone whose infectious sense of humor just carries across, I think, as you'll see in the interview. David shares in this interview his insights with us on developing your own psychic practices, finding your path and purpose in life, and then also his own personal philosophy on how can we put psychic practice and psychic ability in service to those we love in meaningful and pragmatic ways. So I found his insights to be very deep and very great deal of value to me, and I hope you all enjoy listening to this interview with David. I always like to kind of joke in talking about some of the folks who've been having these experiences and doing psychic work and really being a resource to their community. One of the things that always interests me is how do we all get started in this? And can't kind of talk about superhero origin stories. I thought yours was just amazing, but also in reading your book, starting off kind of coming out of a car at high speed sounded like people wouldn't want to start this way. So maybe we could start off there, David, and just talk a little bit about how did this happen where you got involved and realized that you had these gifts?
Well, first of all, I grew up on the island of Molokai, and the island of Molokai was the most spiritual of all of the Hawaiian Islands. In fact, the Kahunas, or the experts in spirituality and in different practices from all of the islands, used to come to Molokai to learn their craft. And so it was like a school, a university for the training of these people with special powers. And not too far from my home, about maybe 5 miles away from my home, there's a place near the airport. And I was told that there was an entrance exam to one of these training places, and the family would come with their little kid, about 5, 6 years old, still little kid, and they'd bring a pig with them, and they tie the pig to a stake, and the kahunas wait, and they tell the little boy or girl to concentrate on a pig until the pig dies.
Whoa. Really?
The kid would do that and says, okay. And the pig would fall over and die. It reminds me of the movie that the Hawaii Remote Viewers Guild people was involved in, called Men Who Stares at Goats.
I was having the same thought, yeah.
Same thing, but these were little kids, and the Hawaiians would observe and watch children at a very young age, and if they showed any type of power or an inclination for something, they would take the kids and train them from the time they were young. And and the way they were trained was more like a actually Jedi mode, yeah. One-on-one, you have a master and a Padawan or whatever. And so it was very similar to the Hawaiian way of training, where you'd have one master with one student for a bit, and you learn all you could from a master. And it was your job to not only learn everything that the master could teach you, but also to develop something new, a new twist, yeah, to things. So that's the island I grew up in. And it's surrounded by the energy in the island, encourages a lot of strange things. In fact, when I used to talk to my cousins and relatives who grew up here on Oahu, they couldn't relate to half of the things I saw and experienced on Molokai. So that's the setting, okay? And this accident that happened when I was 5 years old, my brother and I were sitting in the back seat and we were playing, and he kicked me. And I flew from one side of the car to the next. And right when my aunt was driving the car, and I reached back to try and save myself from falling, and I reached and I grabbed the handle for the door. And the old car doors you pull down to open, not pull up or pull out. So you push it down and the door open. And that's what happened. And I fell out of the car. So I remember falling backwards and trying to avoid falling. And the next thing I know, I popped out of my body. And so as a kid, I popped out of my body and started looking around. I didn't know. I thought I was floating, in the air. And I looked around and everything was different. The colors were bright. The environment looked real vibrant, and kind of too bright. It looked fake to me, like it wasn't real.
This sounds like in the people who've had these experiences, that's a common attribute, isn't it? That they say that it seems even more vibrant and real than normal sense.
Yeah, because with our normal eyes and natural eyes, when we see, a tree, grass, whatever, but using the spiritual eye, when you look at something, you see not only the physical, but also the spiritual, the essence of the plants, the essence of the creatures around. And they're bright, so it's kind of overpowering, and the colors are different and greener than green, and bluer than blue. It's really difficult to explain, but when I was floating around, I also noticed that there were shadows moving around. And for some reason, I felt afraid. And it was this fear that triggered my ancestors to come and get me. and they took me to a safe place.
Now, I found this part of and I have to mention, we talked about this before I hit the record button, but this is all in your Journey of Our Souls book that you captured some of these stories. So it's just an amazing book. But one of the things that really interested in me is when you talked about your first near-death experience, is that there was a trickster element to some of this. So, it sounded like when you had this experience as a child, your ancestors, in addition to pulling you and protecting you, they were protecting you, not only moving you to a different space, but also protecting you for some other spirits that seem to be there. So I wonder is that something you might be willing to share?
Sure. The Hawaiians call this trickster spirits lapu kolohe.
I'm very glad you said that, because I wrote it down, but there's no way to pronounce it.
Yeah, lapu kolohe. A lapu is a spirit or ghost. Okay, and kolohe means rascal. And so these lapu kolohe are the ones that they are, some people believe they're disembodied spirits, spirits of former living people who passed on. They know they're dead. Okay, they know they're dead. And their ancestors didn't claim them. Mm. And because their ancestors didn't claim them, they haven't transitioned to the next world. So they're mad, they're angry, and they want to see other spirits caught in the same situation, because the Hawaiians have a saying. They call this the crab in a bucket syndrome. You ever went crabbing?
I have not.
Yeah. Well, if you go crabbing, we go at nighttime, and we walk in shallow water, and we walk around with nets in a bucket, and we catch a crab, put them in a bucket, catch them. If you put one crab in a bucket, the crab can probably crawl out and escape. You put 2 crabs, 3 crabs, you can even fill the entire bucket up with crab. Fill them right up to the top. None of the crabs will escape. You know why?
Why?
As soon as one begins to make it over the top, another one grabs it and say, "Where are you going?" You grab onto them and hold on. And so it pulls you back down in a bucket. So we call it the alamihi crab, or the crab in a bucket, where in our society, in many societies, once a person begins to show promise to get out of a bucket and raise above themselves, above the peers will re-ankle them back down. So, and that explains who these lapu kolohe are. They're miserable spirits, and misery loves company. So they want as many as people to, not make it to the next. So my ancestors came to make sure that I didn't mingle and go with this group, because at first they can entice you with a lot of different things. Like I think I told you about food. I was hungry in the room. Yeah, I was hungry. I was thirsty, and my ancestors didn't have anything to give me to eat or water to drink. But these guys on the outside of the little room, when my ancestors took me to the safe room, these guys, the tricksters, were giving me plate lunch, open it up, getting nice food, and said, come. So I wanted to join them, but that's one of the ploys that they use. Yeah.
And they some of them look like your family members, right? Some of them actually tried to have an appearance that was familiar to you.
Yes, and that's where we're taught. Although spirits may look like the ancestors, the tricksters can take any shape and any form. Sometimes they not only appear as humans, but they appear at different things in nature. It can be a tree, it can be birds, whatever. So just be cautious when something out of the ordinary appears in front of you, and question it.
Don't just take it for granted that something shows up in your path that looks wonderful.
Yeah.
It might be something some good cautionary tales.
Yeah.
Well, I think David, you mentioned after you had this experience in your book, then you started to have it all turned on for you, right? Like you started to, I think you mentioned like even being in the hospital when you had just come out of this experience, which, I guess you can kind of laugh about it now, but talking about the tricksters and this whole experience being a kid and having to deal with this. But I think you mentioned in your book that as soon as you came out of this, you began to encounter spirits and what we might call angels, like that you were beginning to witness with that spirit vision, being able to see that there were benevolent entities that were moving through the hospital. Is that right?
That's correct. In fact, my earliest experience, my first experience seeing spirits were the angels. They're the first ones that I saw, and I was just banged up. And one of the things that I did at home, I like to stare at the ceiling, and the ceiling had holes in it, and I would use my imagination to kind of connect the dots and create different figures. It's almost like staring up at the stars at night and creating your own.
Try to explain it to now when we didn't have tablets and all these things to distract us, right?
No. So we had to use our minds, and not a device. So yeah, and while I was staring at the ceiling opened up, and it was amazing because when the ceiling disappeared, the roof and everything disappeared. There was a ball of light. And to me, it looked like a big spotlight. And I didn't know what a UFO was. I was too young during that time, but I didn't know what a UFO was. I'm not too sure too many people were talking about UFOs at that time. I don't know. But there's a ball of light, and from the ball of light, there's this kind of like a light beam coming down, shining down, and that's where these people, they look just like regular people coming down and into our room. And there was I think at that time there was a flu epidemic going on. So there were some really sick kids in there, and I was injured. I wasn't sick, so they put me on a different part of the room. And it just so happened that's where the angels came down. Yeah. And when the angels came, I figured they were angels because they were going to the sick people first. These kids that were in bad shape, they're taking these kids and putting them in ice bath.
Oh, wow.
You can hear the nurses filling up the tub with ice and filling up with cold water, and the poor kids, they put them inside, they start screaming, freezing themselves, and just really sad. So these are the sicker kids who were the ones that the angels would first went to, and then they kind of like spread around. And there are a couple of them that came to me, and by then I was hiding under the sheet.
I think you left that part out of the book, but I was going to
ask. Yeah, I was kind of like hiding under the sheet, and I didn't want to deal with them, and I was kind of scared in a way.
But when they left, I was sad. Whoa, where'd they go? Yeah.
Did they some people talk about coming into contact with these compassionate beings that, almost feeling like this radiance of their spirit, of their emotions that may be just overpowering, like a sense of love. Did you have an experience? I was thinking back to when you were a kid, and those are distant memories probably. And I think I would have just like been under the covers and not even looked out. This was happening to me. I just been in an automobile, accident and going through that trauma. But I wondered.
Yeah, the thing about it is that when I first saw it, I was real curious. And but when they entered the room and started putting their hands on people, the first thing I felt was warm. The whole room warmed up. And they had air conditioning in the room during that time, and most of the time it was freezing. But the room just warmed up. And I knew these people were meant well, because they weren't jumping on a bed and jumping around and acting crazy, but they were kind. The way they move was real slow and methodical and very graceful in a way. So they didn't want to frighten anyone, but for a kid, for seeing something like that, it's just kind of scary for a bit. And but while I was in a hospital, I think in the book, I only described the first time I seen the angels, but they came back many times.
Wow. So when you're in the hospital, there were several visitations where they would come.
Yeah, because you had, when the angels came within 48 hours, 2-3 days, the kids that were there that were sick, they're gone. They're out. They're going home, and a new batch would come in. And for me, my injury, because my skull is cracked, I was in there for a while.
Wow.
So when the new batch of kids came in, and that's something I left out of the book, but when the new batch came in, the angels would come back in.
Did the other kids perceive them at all? Did they ever say anything to make you think that the other kids could see?
Yeah.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. In fact, in my other book that I put out, the angels and ghosts of Shingles Hospital, I talk about the two of my friends, a girl and a boy. They had the flu. And in fact, they were there on the first day that I got into I was admitted into the hospital. But the boy and the girl were there, and they caught different parts of the angels being inside the room. One saw them while they were walking, didn't know where they came, and hid under the covers. The other one saw them entering the room and hid under the covers. And for me, I watched until the angels started coming closer to me. As long as they were by the other kids, I didn't mind it so much. But then I realized, they're coming my way.
I think that's one thing in your book. You talk about these experiences. You had this accident, and then you start to have things that are occurring to you that have never occurred before. And I think for several people I've met, and many of us who've had kind of experience, you think about things that happened to you as a child that you kind of maybe swept under the rug, or you think, oh, that was just childish imagination. But I know with my own kids, and some of the experiences that kind of follow these things, you start paying a lot more attention when your kids are telling you things, right? When they start telling some of these stories. But so you had this experience, and you kind of, it seems like at a very young age, then you were in the deep end of the pool. You were, I have to say, like, one of the parts of your book I really enjoyed was when you began to realize your sight. And you have a part that you shared where, you're using it to help your friends, but also I think to look into Christmas presents. I think it's like, this is a wonderful utilization of psychic ability. But was it something that really was disorienting to you as a kid, like, or was it a more easy adjustment for you when you began to have some of these experiences at such a young age?
Actually, I think my inclination was there. It was there in me, my DNA, because I come from a line of Kahunas who were visionaries. They were prophets and seers. Some of the things that I'm doing now, capable of doing now, that's what they did and when they were alive. So I really feel that it was something already inside me waiting for something to spark it. And this accident that I had activated it. So, but once I started displaying it and, showing, talking about spirits, going to movies when I was younger, and I don't want to sit over there. My friends say, "Hey, Dave, go sit over there." No, I don't want. Why don't you want to sit there? There's ghosts. Ghosts! Everyone start running away, and all these kinds of childhood things that I could see but nobody else could see, and it was trying to figure out who I can trust and what I can say. So I had to filter a lot of things out, and that's why most of the people that knew me when I was growing up, my cousins especially, says, "Hey, you're a strange kid because you hardly said anything." It says, "Yeah, because every time I open up my mouth and stuff, you guys get scared." You guys get
Every
scared.
time you tell a story, the eyes get big.
You think I'm crazy, and I don't want to, I don't want to disturb things, but I was always a quiet one watching all these things happening, moving inside our house. It was amazing when I used to watch my dad talk to my auntie then about our their grandparents and great grandparents, and those spirits would come. And I talked to my dad and I said, Tutomoke, which was one of I believe my dad's grandpa. Did he look like this? Oh yeah. So I describe him and everything. And says, asked me, where do you see him? Oh, you're standing by, he's watching you folks talk style with Auntie. That's not something you want to bring up right then, yeah. Scare everybody out the room. So yeah, things like that.
So I think you touch on this a little bit in your book, but I'm sure you mentioned kind of when you have these experiences about who you share it with and how open you are, and when you talk about these things, it could be a sense of isolation sometimes, right? Because people who are not having these experiences, you become like the sort of unusual person there. But I know you also touched on it in your book, just kind of talking about the different cultures you grew up in and the different perspectives between the Mormon culture, between your Hawaiian culture, which seems like it had a lot of support for the experiences you were having in terms of interacting with spirits. But I think it also occurred to me, I don't think you call it out explicitly, but talking about some of the racism that existed as well. And I wonder, like in your experience, when you talk about some of these experiences with spirits or visions, if that kind of perception of racism, that whole, these things that maybe were derived from Hawaiian culture were kind of looked at as not as modern or contemporary and not taken seriously. It seems to me like a lot of our modern culture has lost touch with so much of things that we had for a long time that kind of informed us about how to deal with some of these experiences. And it seemed like in your story, you really were kind of this intersection point between all these different cultures and ideas and religious. So
yeah.
What's your perspective on this?
Well, the word for that is syncretism. It's when you have multiple beliefs from all over the place, and you kind of like pick and choose from these bodies of beliefs, certain parts where you choose to exercise. Yeah. And so it was, you still have to choose. You still have to make the choice. And for me, growing up in a Mormon household, my mom, she comes from a line of very faithful Mormons. In fact, her family, part of the family was the first Hawaiian converts to the Mormon church, the Mormon faith, and they moved to Utah to live and be close to the temple. And it wasn't until the Mormon church decided to build a temple here in Laie that the family decided to move back and help build that temple. So, on both sides, on the Mormon side and the Hawaiian side, we had people of faith that exercise, faith in the God, whether it's the Christian God or the Hawaiian God, they had faith. And when they knew when they prayed, there was someone listening to them, an entity listening to them that loved them and would do everything within their power to manifest the things that they were praying for. And that's a kind of power that's in my genealogy. That's the kind of family I had. So if we were worshiping stone, we believed that that stone had the power to give us, what we were expected, and it did. For the people that converted over to Christianity, they prayed to the Christian God, and the Christian God was able to manifest for them also. So for me, I'm looking at, well, it looks like both ways work, yeah.
Very pragmatic.
So why have to choose? I can put both of them together. So, and my grandmother, who was the person that was very influential on my dad's side, especially the Hawaiian culture, preserving the Hawaiian culture, the language. Both of my grandparents could speak fluent Hawaiian, except for my maternal grandma. She spoke Samoan. She was a Samoan. But my grandparents on my dad's side spoke fluent Hawaiian, and they were immersed in Hawaiian practice. My maternal grandpa grew up on the Big Island, where the volcanoes erupting. And his line, and I'm connected to some very, very powerful spiritual people. So spirituality and being attached to the spirit world, it's ingrained in us. It's part of us. It's part of my DNA. So when I turn and ask my ancestors, and I turn and I ask God, and whatever God there is, to come and help, they do.
Found that I'm skipping
That
around.
answer?
Yeah, that's a great answer. I found that interesting in some of the writing that you had talking about the power of belief and faith. When we're jumping around your story a little bit, but and looking at healing practices and some of the things in your writing, that is a core foundation. That once you have that mindset that there's a God or there's spirits, and you can connect to your ancestors, and once you open your door of perception to some of that, then that reality begins to come in and begins to change your life. So I found that really interesting. Your story is so expansive, it's hard to choose which part of you have so many different parts that you do, but I do know that even before so I think one of the first practices that you mentioned, David, was really having some dreams that led you to Reiki, and that you had some idea that that kind of this call to service of being a healer and sort of your evolution towards the role of what, and again, forgive me if I get the bit like the kahu role, the caretaker of knowledge. And is that accurate? So is that one of the first things that you kind of formally train to begin to kind of hone your skills in?
Yes, actually, if you take a look at some of the careers that I've had, I'm a former police officer. So firefighter, police officer, and also my last career that I spent something like 27 years in as a teacher. Okay, so if you take a look at the careers that I chose, it had to do with helping people. Okay, one was for the police and firemen, it was to protect them. Yeah, and then my final career was helping people by teaching them certain values that make them, hopefully productive citizens. And I was a social studies teacher, so how to behave properly in our society.
What ages were you teaching?
I taught all of the ages from 9th grade to 12. My last several years, my last few years, I was teaching juniors. So, and the classes that I taught was large, actually 25% of them were, my students were special needs. I taught in an inclusion setting where I partnered up with a special ed teacher, and I'd work with the special needs kids, especially autistics. Kids with autism, they seem to trust me for some reason. But that role, like taking care of especially the young kids, the young generation, and teaching them and trying to be a role model to them, that seemed to be really important. And when I started on the path of becoming a healer, I did that mainly after studying who my ancestors were, and the primary thing that they did. Like most of the kahunas, although they're kahuna nui and advising the kings and things like that, their primary role was healing. Helping people heal whatever. And our society, the ancient society, was a warrior society. So there'd be a lot of injuries. So in a warrior society, you have to not only learn how to fight and disable a person, you have to learn how to heal them, because on a field of battle, you may be facing your brother, your father, your close relative. And when the battle is over and peace is made, you have to contend with them. So as long as the battle is fine, you do your best to try and kill each other. But once the war is over, you do your best to try and heal each other until the next time.
This is the point where we realize we're very grateful to live in the age that we are, at least.
So yeah, so when I started realizing that these guys were healers and primary healers, and even as my job as a teacher, I was a healer, because the kids would come in with me and talk to me about their problems they're having at home, and I'd sit and counsel them and try and help them, and that's part of the healing process. Yeah. And so I prayed and I asked my ancestors, I said, you folks are healers, and I want to be like you. Show me what I need to learn in order to be like you. And the answer I got is, there's nobody that can teach you what we know. But there's small little bits and pieces that you can learn how to piece it together. I mean, you go on good mind, your pole, the head, is working really good, and you're clever enough. If we point you in the right direction, you can figure it out. So the first thing they did is show me hands in a dream. This ancestor of mine come in, boy, look, remember, and that was it. And I go, okay.
You get one clue. That was it.
Yeah, you know, you don't have, can I call a friend? You know, there's no clues to that, and I had to figure that out. And finally I got the answer looking through Penny Saver, one of those newspapers that had advertisement, and I flipping through it, and I saw a small box ad, 2 hands right there. And I looked at it and I go, oh wow, what is this? And so I saw Reiki, what it was. And so I started researching, reading up what Reiki was, and I go, wow, you know, this sounds really interesting. So I went to the demonstration, and I had frozen shoulder, my right shoulder. I couldn't even lift my arm up. And so the lady was a Reiki master, and she asked for a volunteer. So I said, I go up. So she put her hand on me, and she was talking. And you know, when you first get into this, you have these misconceptions, like, you know, lights and flashes and everything's supposed to happen when these miracles occur. But you know, I'm sitting over there, nothing's happening. I don't feel anything. I don't even feel warmth from my hand. And so when she was done, she just tapped me and said, okay, I can go sit down. And I walked back to my seat, and I was disappointed. I was ready to walk out. Then I moved my shoulder, and it sounded like bubble wraps going popping. And I go, so I move them again, and even more. And this time I could move my arm even more. And finally, I lift my hand up, and all this cracking inside of her, just crunching. And so I left the room, and I went out, and I did the walking with the hand. See, I can lift my hand all the way up now. But I walked up the wall, and as soon as my hand went up on the wall, even more cracking, and I started moving my shoulder, rotating it, and there was no pain. And to experiment with, if I had some power in my right, I grabbed a water bottle and I flew them across the parking lot like a football. And that thing had the snap and power behind it. I came in from the outside, and the Reiki master was still teaching. I said, sign me up. So that's how I became involved in Reiki, and became a Reiki master. And learning about Reiki actually helped me understand the energy world better. And as I started studying Reiki, a lot of the beliefs of energy, the flow of energy, the movement of energy, matches up with Hawaiian practices of mana. You know, and so they're we're talking about the same thing.
Your ancestors were guiding you to a practice that they had just through a different route and a different tradition.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Back doors. I came in through the back door.
So I have no normal questions, right? This is one that just fascinates me with your story, and having talked to other people who've engaged in their psychic function and psychic ability. But you know, sometimes you look at these things that are happening, like these synchronicities, very unlikely things in life. And I have to say, you know, I just got started in remote viewing, but once you start using psychic function, your life becomes very strange. You have all these things that seem so unlikely, at least in my experience. And so I wonder, you know, looking at your story, and I think I know the answer to this, right? So it's a softball pitch. You really begin to feel like that the guiding hand of some other force that, and I think for you and your story, a lot of this has been this interaction with your ancestors, the desire for them to see you grow to your full potential. And so
Exactly.
do you still feel that it seems to me like it comes in waves? Like sometimes this crazy stuff will happen and you can't even believe that life is doing these things and lining stuff up, and then kind of the wave subsides and it's still for a little bit and then it picks back up again. But I'm just curious, does that seem to happen a lot for you? You have these periods of your life where you just feel like it's you're kind of looking back at where you started and where you ended up, just this amazing journey, right?
Yeah, well, I always caution my students to be careful what you pray for. Yeah, because if you pray for strength, or you pray for better sight and your remote viewing practice, guess what's going to happen? You're going to face an obstacle that you're going to have to overcome so that you can develop the strength inside you. God or your ancestors is not going to step up for you. They're going to let you solve this problem by yourself. That way you get the strength. They have the strength and the knowledge. They want you to be like them. So they're going to leave you alone and let you suffer and go through hardship and go through frustration until you get it right. And so these natural, peaks and valleys, these natural peaks and valleys and stuff occur. And actually, you learn more about who you are and your abilities when you're at your lowest low. What kind of person are you? Are you going to give up just because you've been failing 1,000 times? Guess what? Fail another 1,000 times and pick yourself up, My ancestors, they were tough. You ask my ancestors, well, teach me how to swim. They take you out on a canoe in the middle of the ocean and throw you over the canoe and say, swim. So these peaks and valleys and stuff, especially when we're struggling, that's when we learn the most. Yeah. And we begin to find the mana within ourselves. And the Christians have a saying, God helps those who help themselves. Well, if you keep on praying and you're relying on God to help you every step of the way, you're not going to learn anything. It's a time when you learn how to walk by yourself and carry your load by yourself when you start learning. And that's that's what happens. So even me, I'll get, I'm a Precog pro. I get paid for making predictions on the Standard & Poor's 500 ETF. So even on those and stuff, I run into streaks where I'll get 10 in a row right, and then fizzle out 5 in a row wrong. It's just like
I just have to say, when it comes to anyone who's a psychic practitioner, I have to point this out, because what you just said, David, is so important to me. Which you hear some people and they just make out like everything that they ever do in the psychic world is just this continual accuracy, but that is not the case. I think
it's not.
And we have to tell people, like, if we're advising people, to be very careful that we understand that there's always noise, but there's always a fluctuation sometimes too that I don't think any of us quite understand. But I appreciate you saying that, what you just and also wisdom.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I really like what your narrative there, because I think some people believe you put those prayers forward, you're manifesting something, that thing is just zapped down from heaven like a lightning bolt, and you're just giving it for free. But I think your story is the story of the struggle. It's the story of the dark night sometimes that has to that you yourself have to change to be able to receive that thing that you are seeking.
Because when you struggle, you're building a stronger foundation, and actually when you struggle and you overcome adversity, and you conquer your fears, conquer your doubts, and after that you move on to a new level of understanding where no longer are you thinking or feeling, Right?
Yeah.
So
I know.
that's where you want to be. And in a way, and stuff, the ancestors, my ancestors, and even God is encouraging you to be that person. You know, a lot of Christians, when I hear them say, be godlike, be more godlike, be more Christ-like, and stuff like that. And you know, I share with them some of the miracles that, you know, I've been able to perform. You know, you're not supposed to do that. Says, well, didn't you tell me to be more God and Christ-like? I said, yeah. Said, didn't they work miracles? Yeah. Says, so why can't I? If you guys want me to be more godlike and more Christ-like, why can't I work miracles? Yeah.
And I'm not good at quoting the Bible, but I believe that, you know, Jesus said you're going to do all that I do and more, right? That he's basically saying that. Well, I hope I talked to you beforehand when we got in this to record this, and you said I could ask you anything. So
sure.
About learning. And so for those of us who are maybe having precognitive dreams, or we have practices where sometimes we can see glimpses of our own future or a future of those we love and care about. You had a story you shared in your book, and it really struck me because I think you had a precognition about a friend that you ended up losing. And, you know, it really made me thoughtful when you start to have some of these intuitions about things. What do we do with those intuitions, and what should we do with them? And I don't know if you feel comfortable talking about that a little bit, but I thought it was just a really a hard story, but maybe some really important lessons for those of us who are in this practice and working on this.
Yeah, actually, I share two stories of these prophetic dreams that I had, both involving policemen. The first one was my friend Charlie, and he and I were firefighters on the island of Molokai, and we decided to take the police test, and we passed it, and we got accepted into the police academy. And so I had a bad dream about him. I saw myself standing in a honor guard, like an honor guard in a police uniform. There was a black tape across my badge. And it was really odd because I didn't even get out of recruit school yet. And I was getting, you know, dreams of being in an honor guard. And so we're standing in line, and I look around, there's other people with me. I didn't recognize any of them at the time. But actually, I did recognize it. Yeah. I was already on Maui. We were already, yeah. There were some people in the honor guard and stuff. They were all rookies. We were all rookies. So there's 3 rookies on one side, 3 on the other side. And the sergeant was a sergeant I didn't care for. But the rest of the cops that were there, it was just loaded with cops, and them I didn't recognize. And we were told to stand in line, and we marched up to this large building. And when we entered the building, it was a funeral. And we were asked to post next to a casket, a white casket, kind of like a grayish white casket. And so my post was next to the head, the head portion. And my cousin was posted near the feet. But while someone was giving opening a prayer, I heard someone snoring inside the casket. And the casket lid opened up, and there was my friend Charlie. He was sleeping in a casket. And so I tried to get him out. I says, "Get out of there. What you doing, you idiot?" You know, get out. And he told me, "Oh, no. You know, he's okay." And eventually he stayed in there, and the casket closed, and we that ended the dream. And I woke up crying because I knew it was something bad. The mistake I made is I should have hunted him down.
and I feel really bad about it. I should have hunted him down, but during that time, he's real active in sports. So he was playing, he was working, pulling his shift, but after his shift, he would go down to a softball tournament and play games and drink all night. The next day, come back to work. And he was doing that for almost 3-4 days, and he wasn't getting enough sleep. And I tried getting in touch with him. I left a note in his box, give me a call, I need to talk to you. But he just ignored it. I talked to the sergeant, and still ignored me until finally one day I went home from work. And I lived in a rental where there were a lot of different people there, but I'm in dead sleep. The phone rang and I jumped out of bed. Like I knew something was wrong. I ran to the phone and there was a dispatcher telling me that my friend Charlie was in the emergency room because he got involved in an accident. So I sped up there, and by the time I got there, the doctor was ready to pronounce him dead. But basically, he fell asleep at the wheel, and we ran off the side of the road and collided with a tree trunk, and the steering wheel caught him on the chest and shoved him up onto the roof. And when they took him out, they had to remove the steering wheel to get him out of his car. So I felt really bad because I should have tracked him down and, told him about the dream, at least, to get some sleep or use caution when he's on the road.
I know I can just listen to your voice and see your facial expression and know that, those memories are still poignant and strong. And
Yeah.
On my own behalf, like I had, when I began to try to develop some of this, I had this feeling that my son was going to be in an accident, and thank God he was okay, but the accident came about, and it made me also just very thoughtful, when you're having these flashes about how we use them. And sometimes I think we run into, our family and friends, like, okay, well, this is just crazy dad, or, this is, so, I think the challenge I see sometimes in myself is, if I have this, how do I share it in a way that, that somebody might receive it and do something useful with it? But I thought your story was one that probably we all share to some extent when we realize that psychic ability is real and precognition is real. And, sometimes there's a burden there, right? You feel like you have this burden and responsibility that even somebody might perceive you in a way that might even damage the friendship. You still want to be able to share something with them out of love and concern for them. So I don't know if you have any thoughts or advice. It sounded like from you that you maybe after that point, you really started to share those intuitions with folks and
when I had the next dream involving a police officer several years later, where I saw him falling from a tall place, granite place. When I had the dream, I went and talked to him the very next day. I warned him. And this time he didn't take my warning. And he was caught. You read that part, right?
I did.
So and so he didn't stop the behavior. And in fact, for me, I think the warning that I gave him was, hey, whatever you're doing, stop. Don't do anymore. But he was too caught up. He was too caught up in what he was already doing. And but that I delivered the message, and for me, after that point, after Charlie, and where I could have warned him, I don't know what would have happened. I don't know if it would have changed, but at least I gave him a fighting chance, and I gave him a fighting chance to either listen to me or ignore me. If he ignore me and he end up dead, that's his issue. that's his decision. A lot of times and stuff, we worry too much about what other people think of us. And if you have the gift, you need to put that aside. You need to learn how to put that aside. And I came to a point where I don't care what other people think about me. You think I'm crazy? Thank you. You think I'm weird? Yes, I am. Yeah, so it is a burden, and it's something that you need to learn how to deal with, you know.
Well, I appreciate you sharing your insight in that and the story in that.
Oh, you're welcome.
So I rarely, when we talk about remote viewing, there's a lot of us doing remote viewing. You and I could pontificate a lot to try to explain remote viewing. You might be watching this video, but probably a lot of people will understand it. But a structured method of clairvoyance to be able to see through space and time. And rarely do I get to say that I'm talking to a professional remote viewer. So everybody wants to be able to occasionally get paid for it. But I have to say too, just looking at your remote viewing background, having learned from a lot of different folks, including the Hawaiian Remote Viewing Guild, which is now there's a lot of interest and popularity looking at the HRVG methodology. But I have to say, the other great honor that I have to speaking to you is the one question we always get if people know that you're involved in remote viewing or psychic things is, well, why haven't you won the lottery? And I think you get a pretty good comeback to this, David, when
I did.
You're one of the few. We don't want to be in this category. You go, yeah, well. So I think you've done quite a few things in remote viewing. Is there anything you'd like to focus on or maybe talk about in that part of your evolution and being a servant and a leader?
Well, for me, remote viewing has everything to do with prophecy and the ability to see what's coming up in the future. And for me, I'm the patriarch for my family. I'm the oldest male, the oldest male in my father's line. So when my children or my nieces or my siblings need assistance or guidance, they can call me anytime. And it's my job to provide them insight. Okay. So for the head of the family, you know, the patriarch, it's a special blessing to have this foresight, the ability, second sight, so that you can see what's coming up and help the family avoid certain things. So I use this as an extension to my remote viewing practice. Okay. So for me, remote viewing is just a way of practicing my prophetic tendencies to be able to see hidden things or whatever. But the most important way of using this is counseling people to make the best decisions for them, especially my family members. So for me, I see remote viewing as just, you know, like when we go to the weight room and we start pumping iron and things like that, that's the exercises to make us strong. But if you're using all of this time to practice and strengthen your muscles, when are you going to use that?
Right.
When are you going to use that? So for me, I see all of the remote viewing that I do, chasing the lottery, doing the horses, the whatever I do. Okay, that's just the practice for when my family needs to say, "Hey, Dave, I have an issue with this. This is what's happening. I need to know what's coming up. Can you help me?" Sure, sis. Let me work on that now. And that's when my actual purpose comes to the forefront, where I can actually operate and use my skills, you know, as the leader.
That's a wonderful note, because what I have noticed, some people, when they've gotten into remote viewing and they're running practice targets over and over again, well, how many practice targets can you run without starting? Or I don't mean this in a bad way, because I love all these things, but you see a lot of entertainment remote viewing where you're looking at things like, where's Bigfoot, and all these kinds of questions. But what I love and what you just shared, David, is pragmatically, it sounds like if you looked at the role of what people who had this site were using in their communities, they were to try to help people you care about, help people you love. And I find it kind of funny in my own family. There's some people, if I shared this with my family members, some of them are not very accepting of it, and yet they've gotten into situations where they've come to me and and asked me questions. So it's like, can you have it both ways? Can you not accept me for what I'm doing? I still want to. But I think the other thing that I found also just really intriguing that you were sharing is, we talk about associative remote viewing, but and practicing some of these things. But I think you shared in your book kind of the archetype of the gambler, and how, in Hawaiian culture, maybe that the gamblers, some people say, well, oh, you're using remote viewing or these abilities to make money. But I think you shared in Hawaiian culture, this is a totally different perception, right? The gamblers kind of celebrated and using these skills to. So I thought that was really interesting as well. I've seen some people kind of struggle about, if you can, quite honestly, looking at associative remote viewing, where a professional gambler might be making 52% accuracy rate. And then I think those of us who actually are kind of in on the know, a little bit, your accuracy rate can be much higher, obviously, with psychic ability. So kind of
right now I am hitting at about 74%.
Goodness gracious, are you really?
Yeah.
Okay, you're gonna have a lot of people, anyone who watches this video, find you and get in your associated remote viewing classes. But that's amazing. So you've refined your method for many years, right? Looking at associated viewing. And
actually, that's just using the prediction part, 74%. Okay, for if I take a look at the predictions that I take action on, then you take a look at the high 80s, low 90%.
Wow. Okay.
So on the
bets
that I actually made,
my accuracy rate.
yeah. I'm gonna bring up something. Hold on. You see that?
I do.
Feedback target.
So is this for some of the professional work that you're doing, looking at market?
Yep. So
wow.
this particular one is is the work that I did, and it shows the process that I use. So Omega is something that we do on Fridays. Okay, and here's a TRN, and this was the date for this. So I got my TRN 666354, and I drew this right over here. So you can see something that right in the middle of the target, there's something standing up and space, then two sections basically. And how many people are there here?
3. There you go.
Yeah, 3 people. So there's something kind of like standing up on some kind of line. And so when I looked at the choices, I got this one right here, So I got 3 people, the line up there, and something like partition, separated. So I chose this, and this target choice was associative remote viewing, and this target was associated with up. Okay, so that the spider or the Standard & Poor 500 ETF was gonna go up that day, and the end result, if you look at it, the opening bid was 402.14. And I believe on this day, the cutoff point was something like 3.6. So if you look add 3.6 to this, so you're looking at 405.7. So by closing out at 407.41, we were way above. So this is a successful prediction right here.
How long do you find? So I haven't been doing associative remote viewing for long. In my practice, I can see the geometries of the site. I get a lot more visual data before I get anything else. So they're fairly quick for me. But when looking at your short structure here, like how long does it take you kind of to engage the target? And the more you've done this, I'm sure, have you found like that it's become a fairly quick process for you to kind of get this high level data, or even, even your sketch is not high level data. That's a lot of correlation to the target.
Yeah. Actually, when I spend more time in cool down, I spend about 10 minutes in cool down. But when I take the TRN to Blackboard, my mind, from the time I place it in my mind and I get my first snapshot, it's just like a quick click. And I have to remember what I see and the sensations, and I draw. So this would be my my sketch. The first thing that I drew was this big white thing, and I started listing down things. So it took me less than 5 minutes to do that.
So
I just did it as quickly as I could without thinking.
It's and so watching those things just kind of bubble up in your mind that come
Yep.
there. Yep. That's amazing. Yep. How long have you been doing it, the associative remote viewing, and practicing it, David? Has it been?
I started associative remote viewing back in 2011.
So this is a question I would pose to you, and it's not a fair question. It's sort of a philosophical question, if you will, but those are always interesting ones. So, looking at the broadening awareness of remote viewing or psychic functioning, and there's a lot of interesting things going on these days where people are coming back to these things. But the truth is, a lot of us are not following the same rules as everyone else. Some of us know that it's possible to look into the future and to see with some accuracy. So yeah, if you I don't know if you think this world could ever really occur, but if the public began to have a broader awareness and really take psychic functioning real, Ingo Swann wrote about this idea of a psychic renaissance, where people began to actually realize this role of a trusted psychic advisor and bringing that back. But I wonder how people will perceive the fact that we've been using these abilities. We're not exactly we're not approaching some of these challenges like sports betting, where you might have to go out and research all the players. When I sports bet, I don't know anything about the players, and I don't know anything about the sports. Instead, I'm just looking for that feedback loop to tell me what's going to happen in the future. So I'm curious how you view that, where that might go.
My suggestion to my students when they start asking me for details like, how do you do this, and is there a right or wrong way? I go, there's a right way for you to do it. There's a right way for you to do it. Whatever works for you. Says, what do you mean? Says, well, if you can pull it out of your orifice.
I would like to be one of your.
For you. That's fine. You can do that. Psychic revelation comes in many forms. And the amazing thing is that I'm a trained tarot reader now, yeah. And in fact, I took a class from this guy named Richard Knight, and I went through his training and everything, and I used tarot. And in fact, earlier today, I had 2 readings that I gave. But when I have the tarot cards lined up in front of me, when I pull everything for a client, it's almost like a huge RV session for me. because the pictures that I'm looking at, yeah, there's assigned meaning to this, but as you put them next to each other, it tells a story. And my abilities to, psychic abilities kicks in, and I can see the hidden things that's going on, a deeper meaning into this. So I see the cards that I pull as almost like getting feedback for a remote viewing session.
That's fascinating.
So it makes even more sense to the tarot, interpretation that I have. So all of this have a tendency of, I find myself that the new things that I start learning, it's coming my way at the right time to add to my tool chest to make me a better person, to help people better and easier. Before I used to do my psychic readings using ARV. I mean, people, my good friend, he was seeing two women, and he says, Dave, which one should I do? Which one should I focus on?
This has to be one of the weirdest psychic questions ever.
Yeah, which one? Which one? And so I says, okay, give me the names. I wrote them down, and I have my I have my packet back here. Hold on. Here's my targets. Here's my targets. So for my targets, I pulled two pictures. It says, describe the picture in this envelope if the first woman is the right person for my friend. Pulled another one. Describe the photo in this envelope if the second woman is right for my friend. And so I just trusted and drew out a sketch. And I tell you, when I drew quick sketch, just came out and fill out as much information as I can. I opened the first envelope. No, gone. Second envelope was just like I was drawing the stuff and looking at the picture. Wow. So I call him up. I says, you know what, your second choice, Tanya, is the person that you should focus on. Within a year, he got married to her, and they're still happily married. So
how did you meet your significant other? Well, my friend who's a psychic did associative remote viewing to tell me that. That's a wonderful story. I love too how you're using those skills to be able to help your friends and your family with practical, real world kind of questions. So that's amazing.
You see, and that's the thing. I'm trying to get across to a lot of these people who do RV. It says, you can go halfway around the galaxy if you want to describe an object somewhere, on some alien's body, or whatever, you can do that. But what's the practical application?
It's a great point. Yeah.
How are you gonna use this in everyday life? For me, that's why I stick with ARV, because it has practical applications. And like, for me, I'm not afraid to try something new. Like a lot of people are saying, hey, horse races, there's 6 horses. How do you solve that? Well, if I get 6 horses running in a race, I draw 6 envelopes, each one representing a horse. And tell me, I ask myself, show me the right envelope, that represent the winning horse. And couple summers ago when Justify won the Triple Crown. Justify, the horse, the last Triple Crown winner. I was doing more horse racing, and it was interesting that every time that Justify was in a race, he stood out really easy.
That's awesome.
So yeah, be creative, use your mind to find practical applications for the skills that you're learning. Otherwise, you're just wasting your time.
And that kind of stood out to me. I'm only been doing any of this for a year, and then things from my childhood and stuff that I had kind of flooded back into my life, to be honest. But it stands out to me that people can understand that you can see through space and time and not be dogmatic about that, but they get the protocols and they become very dogmatic about the protocol, like in remote viewing, as opposed to, like you said, like being very creative and thinking like, oh, how are the different ways I can use it, and can I expand it, and how do I, are there ways to, so, and also you made me think about, these traditional methods of the people were tapping into the same ability. If you're, augury, if you're looking at like intestines, and they would draw them out to read somebody's future by looking at entrails, or scrying, looking into a bowl of water. It seems like all of these methods are just ways to get down to that same fundamental inner truth that we have. So I find your tarot practice really fascinating, that you're getting that same kind of remote viewing experience, as you're getting those that information coming up as you look at that. So it's almost like the tarot cards are a TRN, or just an objective that are bringing information up to you.
Yeah. Well, and just like when I choose the envelopes, show me the picture here that means something. And so when I have the tarot cards in front of me, that's what I'm doing. It says, I want to take a look at a person's finances. Well, show me the right card out of all of these cards. Show me the one that describes my client's financial health right now. And I'm led to a certain card. So it's an extension of everything that I've been doing.
This is not a fair question for you at all, right? Because it's not one that I think anyone really feels that, there's a lot of scientists who think they're going to come up with the answer for this. And I've met a few of them, but what do you think, Dave? So all the way that this, the way that psychic functioning works, and you and I talk about time loops, and I think we understand what we're talking about, that sometimes you see something that kind of is information, it feels like it's coming back to you but I think other times we probably had experiences where it feels like that it's not that, it's something much bigger and broader that the information is coming from for us. So in your experience, looking at psychic functioning, why do you feel that we're imbued with this as human beings? And some people might say it's just something going on in the brain. They start talking about quantum science or all this. I see your smile. I don't know if that's the way that you would perceive it as well.
Actually, I tie it back to our ancestors, who we were in the past. Our ancestors lived in dangerous times. Their key to survival was understanding the signs and omens that was available in nature. And they learned how to read it. They learned how to read the signs. And so these things that we looking at, remote viewing, ESP, or whatever, and stuff, these were developed, generations ago. And the way people talking about it now is just like it's something new. It's not. It's been something that's been in our DNA for thousands of years. It's just that now we're realizing that, with all of the technology that we have, there's something missing in us. And that's what I keep on hearing from a lot of clients who are going through this awakening. Something's missing. There's something missing. There's something inside me that makes me realize I'm greater than what I am. And there's things that inside me that needs to be awakened. And so can you help me? And so my job is to try and discover that with my clients. So it's something that goes back generations and generations ago. The key to that is survival. if you know what's coming up in the future and you can prepare for it, that guarantees survival to the next day and passing the genes to the next generation. If you don't have that ability and stuff, if you're living in the ancestors, and part of the ancestors get the idea that there's going to be a saber-toothed tiger that's going to be munching on one of you, and 6 guys in a group get the message. The 7th guy never got the message, never got the memo. He's going to be cat food. So he's eliminated from the gene pool, and all of these other guys who got the message, got this idea, get it to pass it on to the next. So that's why I believe, when scientists are looking for why is this happening, it comes down to survival. Yeah, it's a survival. It's a tool for our survival. And, you're going to notice that as people make more predictions. An interesting person to follow, is Dick Ogire. Do you follow him? He'll make predictions on headline news. Yeah, he'll draw headline news and things like that. But a lot of his predictions on these things are very accurate. They come out. Yeah. So the more and more we get in tune to that, the more people develop that, and so the more likely that we'll survive whatever coming up.
Right.
So that's the way I answer that question.
Great answer. I've heard Joe McGonigal talk about that before, thinking that we're really just using a channel that we've always had. And I guess the most common psychic experience, even if people aren't trying to develop these skills, is if you're about to run into a dangerous situation. They talk about soldiers who have a sudden premonition that they shouldn't go down a certain route, or that there could be a dangerous booby trap waiting, and so that's fascinating.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I along that lines, I live in central Oahu, and in order to get to my workplace in close to the South Shore of Oahu, it's a drive of 17 miles one way. Okay, and it takes about 45 minutes, and it's busy normally. And when I was still working, a lot of times I'm sitting at my computer and my wife says, "Dave, you need to get on the road." And I look at her and says, "This is a bad time to go." What are you doing here? She says, "This is a bad time to go. It's not a good time for me to be on the road." And it's annoying. Yeah. And sure enough, when I jump in a car and start heading out, I just missed an accident.
Wow.
The
habit of listening to that little inner voice has become a very important part of. Yeah. Absolutely.
Because if I don't listen to that small voice and stuff, I'm gonna get slapped in the head by a bigger man.
I'm gonna remember that one. I'm gonna slow that. That's a good one. I'm gonna carry that one around. I can't possibly go through. You have so much in your story, so I really encourage people to go and read your books. You have several that are out there, but Journey of Our Souls. I just like the title too, by the way, and the way you approach that. Not just about your journey, but how you tried to articulate that as being thoughtful for their own journey and trying to find their highest purpose and what we're all trying to figure out what we're here to do and help others. But I would be remiss to leave this out too, because I've also, it fascinates me because you and I were joking around about this in email, but I know you started a fictional series around Anna Blaze, and the fact that you have superpowers. you started, so it fascinates me that you're writing about a young girl who's going through these experiences and has these. Would you mind sharing a little bit of what kind of motivated and inspired you to start that fictional series?
Yeah, you're correct that I was trying to create a character that experienced the same type of issues I did as a gifted child, trying to grow up in in society while trying to hide a lot of the things that I was capable of doing and seeing. And so Anna Blaze is a product of that. And a lot of the things that I wish I could do as a child comes out in her.
Things you wish you could have gotten away with?
Yeah. My wife always joked because one of the dreams that I keep on getting, and my wife kind of like cautioned me, because she knows me in my dreams. When I dream about something, it's showing me something that I'm capable of doing, and it seems that in several of my dreams, people are picking on someone I love and care for. And when I intervene and they try and hurt me, these people are much bigger, more powerful than me. And I just look at them and I raise my hands and I say, no. And they turn to dust. So
now, this is a superpower you're going to develop. I want to be in your circle of trust if you teach it to me. I promise I won't use it.
Maybe that's a new meaning to the hands. So, and sometimes, this energy inside. I mean, there's things that I've been able to do in the environment. I share a story with you, but one year, my wife and I were watching New Year's, and our neighbor is a pyromaniac. He was blowing up firecrackers and everything. And we were watching his fireworks, and the wind started blowing the smoke towards our house. And my wife looked behind and says, "Oh, we forgot to close our windows." And she tried to walk away, and I just held her. I says, "No, stay here." And she says, "What?" Says, "Here, this is what I'm going to do." And I held my hands out like this. And the wind was blowing down straight towards our house. Then the smoke was coming down towards our house and was going to about to enter our property. And I held my hand out, and the wind came from this side and blew the smoke away from us and into our neighbor's house. But the smoke just coming down straight towards us, and then all of a sudden just went whoop, move. And this wind wasn't a strong wind, but it was just enough to push everything on that side. So the smoke didn't go to our house. In fact, it didn't even come into our property. And my wife is over there, "You kidding me?" Says, "Oh no, I just asked. I just asked." And you can always ask, and whether or not nature going to answer and agree, that's up to them, And I'm not going to force anything. But since nature did take care of that, I said, "Mahalo, thank you. Thank you for your taking care of us. I appreciate it."
It makes me think, once you start seeing that you don't have all the answers, right? That you get a humility to you when you start realizing like the world's a lot more magical than we realize. But I was reading about stories of these Western scientists who had gone to Tibet, and the Dalai Lama was evidently there, and they were going to have a procession for a funeral, and there was a lot of bad weather, and he went to a friend of his who was a monk, a sage there, I guess, of some way, and said, let's not have that happen. And evidently he did some practice, and to the astonishment of the Western scientists, there was evidently a circle of sunshine that followed the procession, and all the rain was around it. So what strikes me is, like, maybe to your point, Dave, we've lost knowledge of who we are, right, in our broadest sense, and so our very ideas of our own limitations maybe become these boxes that bound us in. And when we start being like a child and have that innocence, not really to say, well, we don't really know, like who would have the thought like you did? You express your intent to cause something to happen. And I think you shared earlier, if you have that belief in your heart and you have that mind of a child, that people hear the mind of a child and it sounds, in our culture now, it sounds terrible, right? That we're naive, or that but I think to me, I started to realize that maybe there's a power in that I feel that to come at the world with that spirit. So your story reminded me of that.
Yeah, what's interesting is that what you just described about this monk in the funeral happened to me when I was taking my granddaughter and her husband. Actually, it was a boyfriend at that time, and we took them riding on a North Shore, and I wanted to show them a beach. I wanted to show them a beach that was important to me, and where I got my initiated as a kahu. And it was raining. And my wife and I was in one car, and they were following us in the back. And so when they got to the spot, I parked the car, and it was raining outside. And my wife says, "Well, this rain needs to go away. We need to wait." And I says, "Well, let me see what I can do." And I just said a small prayer. I says, "Take the rain away just for a little bit, because I need to show my granddaughter this place." I opened the car door. The rain stopped, but just around our two cars.
Really?
My granddaughter and boyfriend came, and they're looking at raining on every place else, but right where we at and stuff is not raining. So I came, I pointed at him out, and right when I got through explaining about the place, and they got back into the car, we got back into our car, and I says, "Mahalo, rain came out."
That's amazing. So all it takes is one time for that to happen, and they're going to be coming to you forever to bring the nice weather. That's
Well, that's why a lot of people ask me to get involved in the planning of outdoor events.
Well, there's so many things I could ask you. I really have enjoyed our conversation so much, and I just wanted to say too, when I first got into some of this and trying to figure out remote viewing and some of the things that came with it, you were very willing to jump on a call with me, not even knowing who I was. And I think your spirit and your service just really came through, because you were so kind to be willing to share some stories with me when I was just a little bewildered, to be honest. You're trying to figure out what was going on, and how much I appreciated that. And so I guess the parting question for you, for those of us who are finding ourselves, and I think some of us in the past few years feel like we've just been drug into this world, whether we want it to be or not. You just, and so for those of us who are kind of walking this path, do you have any advice for us from your years of experience? What are some things that might be the most important things for us to remember?
The most important thing to remember is that this is an individual journey. Yeah. And we're on this journey to make ourselves better people. And so who's the best guide for that, to determine that? Us. Okay. And sometimes when we listen too much to these people who are entrenched in certain dogma, they're there as gatekeepers. They're there as gatekeepers. One of the main reasons why I stay away from organized remote viewing people is that they're more interested in proving that RV works, and following the protocols and following the bright guidelines, blah 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 blah. And I'm over there. I says, "Why are you guys worried so much about what other people think? It works. So who cares? Who cares?" But since this is an individual journey and so fun, there's a lot of different ways of doing the same thing. And don't be afraid to explore and use your mind. Because if you just stick to what's out there, in the strict guidelines, there's only you only limiting yourself, because there's much more vast world. And I know some people take a look at natural clairvoyance or natural psychics, and so that's the worst people to teach remote viewing because they don't follow protocols. So yeah, I can tell you what you can do with your protocols because those things don't work for me. That's not how I operate, And so it's just like a cookie cutter approach. Everybody fit in the same, thing, but we're not cookies. We're not dough, and I don't want to be cookie. I want to be a nice dobash cake. And
you have a very specific destiny in mind.
Yeah. So, just be open to a lot of different things. In my journey, I went through a lot of different schools, shamanic training. I took a look at that, and I still expanding. So never stop learning, because you're gonna find unexpected knowledge that you can use to perfect what you're trying to accomplish. Yeah.
Well, Dave, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your stories, sharing your wisdom. I feel like I've talked to the Jedi Master. So I also mentioned, I'll put some links up when I post YouTube, but you are a teacher. There's a lot of services that you offer online, and put some links up there. But I just really appreciate your time. So appreciate all you're doing. And thank you for spending some of that time with me today.
All right. It was fun. Thank you.